All right, welcome back. Where we left off was I was actually going to show you the emulator in your file. So let's do that. As you can see, we actually have inherited a complete and working file. We've got the NMT1 and it's doing AEC in the microphone. That's a really good trick, by the way. If you're looking for extra AEC channels, the NMT1 can give you some. But there it is. We've got the microphone audio coming in, going into the mixer, and being mixed and coming out, and ultimately coming to our amp and coming to our speakers over here. There it is, right here is our whole audio chain. We've got USB audio coming in, USB audio going back out to our speakerphones. We also have a working video system. Here are 3 HDMI inputs that we were talking about coming into the NV32 and coming out to our two displays. Additionally, we've got our 2 cameras coming into a MediaCast router going to our video bridge. We're going to spend a lot more time looking at all of this in due course. But we also, down here in the bottom, we've taken the time to sort of lay out some worksheet area. And in other versions of the class, you kind of need a lot of space to do some of the work. Namely, look down here at the camera presets. Look at all of that real estate that we have reserved for camera presets. You're going to be shocked when I tell you that in full Lua, the actual code to write the press and hold presets that we're going to get to by the end of this course, it's like 30 lines of code. Nate, it's only like 30 lines of code.
Well, and it's also just one little component. It's, like you said, all that real estate just for one little component, and that's all you need.
And that's part of the beauty of moving from control components to the block controller to swimming with the text controller.
Now, I will say this, though. I do like to emphasize that there's a time and a place for control components, right? If you're doing something really, really simple, like, oh, I just need to invert this mute button before it goes over here, oftentimes I would argue it makes more sense to use a little control component that runs through a logic not than to run it through a script, because the next person who's looking at that design has to then open up that script to read it to figure out what you're doing to it.
Yeah.
So just because we're giving you all the tools for Lua doesn't mean that you should use Lua for everything.
Right.
Sometimes it does make more sense to do it simpler with control components as well.
Right. The thing we really hope that you get out of all of these classes is knowing the right tool to use in the right circumstance. That way you don't try to use a hammer to install a screw. One of the last things I want to show you in this file is down here in the bottom is actually the emulator. Our pretend room is down here in the bottom. So what's going to happen is we're going to complete signal chains by running through the emulator. That's what all of these little signal flags are going to do. Now, there are more signal flags than we're going to use today, again, because there's different versions of this class and slightly different ways to accomplish things. We're going to talk through all of that. But we probably should actually just show you the actual room itself. Come right here and you click on the emulator. You can see that here is our little emulator. And poor guys are sitting in the dark. If you were to go online, and by the way, you can go online by hitting F6. That's my favorite way of doing it. And I typically am going to call that saying when I hit go.
Now you're calling that going online.
Yeah, which is true. So we are now in runtime. In fact, what we've done by entering emulation is we have made our little laptop, we've kind of turned it into a core. It won't do a lick of audio, but it'll do everything else without any licensing. It'll run the complete control engine and run your UCIs and everything. But again, right, the heartbeat of this is that you're able to run your code and see if it is working or not. So here's our emulator, and in fact, those poor people, they're sitting in the dark. Let's help them out. Turn the lights on, and as you can see, there they are. They're having their meeting. Here's how you should think about it if you're pretending at home. You should imagine that the system has been designed, configured, all of the equipment has been installed, all of the base groundwork of having a working system. All of those boxes have been checked. Now we're at the place where it's time to do the control scope of work. So
Realistically, it's actually too late for that because there's already people in the room. This should have happened previously. They're sitting there in the dark staring at TVs that are off. We were late to the job, sounds like.
So one of the last things to mention here is there's in-room actions. That's because we're gonna have to actually pretend that we actually connected the laptop. But look what happens when you connect the laptop. You get a little HDMI cable. And if you plug in the USB, you get a little USB cable, and you plug in that HDMI, you get that HDMI cable. So these are things that we're going to be able to do in our emulator, and it's all going to make sense as we move forward. But at this stage of the game, what we actually should do is, since we are in runtime, let's go ahead and put in our name. So I'm going to put mine in. Jeff Perkins.
Well, don't put the teacher in name yet. The teacher is going to be the name of your live instructor. So after you finish this online section, then you're going to do a couple hours with a real instructor via, a conference call with us. That's your teacher name. Don't put Jeff's name in there unless Jeff is your teacher, who he very well may be, but he's not your teacher yet. So leave that second one blank for now.
Additionally, while we're here, let's go to File, go to Save. I've already saved mine. You may want to do File and Save As, and do this. Save it, put your name in the file, and put it somewhere where you know where it is, because you're gonna want this file. Why are you gonna want this file? Because you're taking this class. You're gonna want to get credit for it, and you're gonna have to submit the file to get credit for it.
Yeah, if it wasn't clear, you have to do everything that Jeff does in this course, in your design as he goes. So don't just sit back and watch. This is interactive.
Yep.
Also, want to point out, I'm going to be doing it with Jeff as well. My screen looks a little bit different than Jeff's. I've decided to go entirely in dark mode. That way, if we do cut to my screen, you'll know that it's my screen versus Jeff's screen. If you're also operating in dark mode, you'll see that the design doesn't look so good because this blue is just the ugliest neon blue. You can right-click the background. If you unlock the background, you can then delete it, and that way this design looks a little bit better in dark mode. So if you want to operate in dark mode like I am, it's a good tip.
Also, while we're here, I want you to go to File, go to Preferences, and right there in the middle, if you don't learn anything else from this class, this is worth the price of admission. Right here in the middle where it says Script Editor, change yours to say VS Code. Right? If yours still says Legacy Editor, this is going to blow your mind. Okay? Turn on VS Code. It's going to enable autocomplete and all kinds of other really useful things that we are 100% going to leverage. And the end result is that I actually, when I go to type code and syntax, because it's doing autocomplete, I won't actually have to type all of the letters. I'll just type 1 to 2 or maybe 3, and then autocomplete will be like, is this what you mean? And I'll say, yes, I don't mind if I do, and I'll just hit tab, and it'll type it in. The other thing that it does is it spells correctly. It knows when to capitalize, when not to capitalize, how to spell Boolean, all those other things. It even knows the variables that you create. You're gonna wanna use it. I'm going to use it. You're gonna hate yourself if you don't. Okay, so
another thing you got while you got that preferences window open, make sure your autosave is on. Make sure that your autosave is engaged so that periodically it'll back up your design so that if your laptop crashes, you won't lose everything.
Yep. The way you can know that you're living dangerously is that if you do something like I changed something. If you look right here, up in the top, you get the little asterisk right there behind your design. That means you have unsaved changes. So what have we learned? We've learned where we are and what we're doing and what the big idea is, and we really are ready to start digging in. So we'll do that. You take a little break. We'll see you in just a minute.